The issue we have with the French is that they are our neighbours and they are collaborators with us, both economically and in terms of trade and much more. So we need this relationship to work. But at the moment, it's not working, is it?
Absolutely. You know, the French are some of our best allies normally, but things have really hit rock bottom, especially since Brexit. And, you know, I think that we should obviously, the British government has played its own role in that, but France has been behaving quite appallingly. I mean, even just this week, since I wrote the article, funnily enough, saying that things had got so bad, Macron has called Boris a clown. Now, you and I could say that Boris is a clown, but when you're dealing with diplomatic situations, international relations, you have to choose your words a bit more carefully than that, I think. And this is, you know, part of a series of kind of gaffes and insults and threats that have been sent from the French to the British, particularly over the past few months. You know, most recently we had one of Macron's, essentially the head of the French diplomatic service, dismissed Boris as a populist who uses others to sort of take the blame for all of his problems. We've had the French Europe minister, Clément Beaune, say that you know, Britain only understands the language of force, and that's why they're sort of threatening Jersey, for instance, with cutting off their power. We've had Jean Castex, the French Prime Minister, say that Britain needs to be punished, essentially, for Brexit, to show the rest of Europe that that leaving the EU is a terrible mistake. So we have these kinds of strange threats, you know, almost very absurd language coming from the highest levels of French politics, and that's really a problem, I think.
How much of this is the fact that Monsieur Macron is in campaigning mode for the presidential election? Will things settle down in the UK-French relationship when, as expected, he wins that election?
I think that's a part of it. I think that Macron is facing a lot of challenges in that election. I think he has to sort of be seen to be standing up for French interests. But I think another problem is slightly deeper and longer term, and that is in relation to Brexit, because France wants to position itself as the leader of Europe, the leader of the EU, especially now that Angela Merkel has stepped down. And I think France sees itself as, in a sense, wants to show the benefits of the EU or show that leaving the EU is a terrible idea. It's taken on this role of enforcing the Brexit agreement, essentially. That's what a lot of the fishing rows have been about. And it's gone a lot further than the actual text of the agreement. It's been as punishing as it possibly can be to Britain, even going as far as, you know, arresting trawlers and things like that, and making these threats to Jersey, as I mentioned before, to cut off their electricity. So there is that kind of Brexit problem that means it could go on after the election. And the other factor is the culture war. And the culture war is now an international phenomenon. And I think, you know, to his admirers at home and abroad, Macron wants to present himself as a technocrat, a centrist, a kind of sensible, quote unquote, person. I'm using, you know, the finger quotes because it's actually a bit mad. In contrast to someone like Boris Johnson, who he wants to be the anti-Boris, the anti-populist, that kind of thing. So there are many dimensions that I think mean that it probably won't be repaired that quickly after the elections.
Yes, he's clearly an agitator. I've sometimes thought there are parallels between himself and Putin. I sometimes think he is the French Putin, because he certainly is something of a populist leader. Do you think he'll try to take that sort of space, that political opportunity, with the departure of Angela Merkel as being the most sort of significant figure in European politics?
I think that's the space he's been trying to occupy for a very long time, and Merkel has, slapped him down in her own quite cold way. I don't think it's really possible. I think there are structural reasons as to why Germany is more powerful than France and plays a bigger role in the EU. The European Union is essentially modelled on the German domestic political system. Germany is much more powerful economically. France has really been struggling, actually, the last few years, even before COVID. So I don't think France can play that role, but I think Macron certainly wants to. He may have some more success with the new German government. I think they're much more amenable to Macron's ideas about deeper European integration, whereas Merkel is someone who doesn't want to change anything unless she can possibly avoid it, essentially.
Clearly, the French have weaponised trade tensions in order to punish us for Brexit. They've also weaponised the fishing row and the migrant crisis. But how much of this is personal? To what extent is there enmity, do you think, between the Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Macron?
I don't think it's personal. I think it is structural for the kinds of reasons that I've outlined. And, in many ways, I think Macron and Boris have a lot in common. Certainly the kind of strange version of Boris that we've been seeing in the past in the past year or so. This kind of
you mean like sort of
Boris,
eco Boris,
yes,
woke
exactly.
Boris, socialist Boris?
I think those things are things that Macron will certainly agree with. I think Macron is not a traditional politician. He's an arch technocrat. He's much more likely to get his political ideas from like management consultancies like McKinsey and things like that than from what the voters want. I think that's the way he operates. And so, yes, the way that Boris has gone to the upset, I'm sure, of many GB News viewers, it is actually very similar to Macron. So there should be, in theory, there should be a much stronger relationship there. There's a lot more that they agree on than they disagree on.